My name's Mark. So for those who don't really know, I started out as a bass player, not as a guitar player. And for a bunch of years I used to gig as the bass player before I eventually moved on to guitar. And the role of the bass player in a song is quite different than the role of the guitar player. There are a bunch of things that if you do as a guitar player, can really sound interesting and add up to the song, but as a bass player it will only leave the song a little bit more empty, or less fuller sounding. And there are a bunch of things that I used to do as a bass player to kind of outline chords and do some little fills here and there when needed, that I guess I kind of brought to my guitar playing. I didn't really do it consciously, it's just something that happened. And I'm guessing that probably many of you didn't really start out on bass and learned all of these different techniques and these little tricks that can really spice up your playing a little bit. So because I can, I thought I'd start a little series called Bass Playing Tricks for Guitar. For instance, this episode is about chromatic fills and bass lines. If you use this sort of a thing in soloing, it can kind of give you this bluesy feel. A little bit Chris Buck-ish, or a little bit like Danish Pete sometimes. Since this is sort of the pilot episode, I'm not really sure how it's going to turn out. It will probably be a while till you see the next episode, but if you want more, please leave it in the comment section below. I've done a little video talking about bass playing for guitar a bunch of months ago that you can check out in the cards section right there, but let's see if this can turn into a real thing. You guys decide. But for now, let's look at those chromatic bass lines. But before I do, I just want to say please subscribe to my channel. You're probably aware that YouTube's been acting a little bit weird lately. Even if you subscribe to the channel, those channel's videos may really not show up in your subscription box. And even if you ring the little notification bell thingy below, you'll still really be able to be notified of that channel's content. So if you want to sit tuned to my content, you really should subscribe and turn on all the notifications. But since that may or may not work, I highly suggest you follow me on social media. Not only do I post some exclusive stuff there, like improvised solos and jamming over backing tracks, and generally whatever I'm up to at the moment, but I always post there about my videos. Links for the usual suspects will be below, like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, but in general, at Mark Guitar. Oh, and since you're down there, please consider leaving a like, and perhaps share this video on social media. I'd highly appreciate it. But yeah, I guess now we can get straight into it. By the way, the background scenery is a little bit different from my other videos. I had to move some stuff around, and I'm still figuring out the best way for these videos, but in the meanwhile, this is what we got. So here's something I used to do as a bass player. Anytime you have a song like... I can bet you in 90% of the songs, the bass part will be... Or sometimes they add octaves. And as I mentioned before, the role of the bass in a song and the role of the guitar in a song isn't really the same. For a guitar player to be playing these chords, if you add some fills here and there, many times it won't really stand out from your regular chord playing. But as a bass player, what you want to do is tighten up everything between the guitars and the drums and give that really solid foundation, so you usually end up playing simple stuff, because that's what gives the song its basic structure. In most cases it would be a little bit over the top if you just went out of your way to play bass fills in every chord, like... In a solo situation, if you have a bass solo, it can sort of work because you're still playing the roots of the chords, so you're still making it obvious to the audience what song you're in. And again, it depends on the song, but doing that in the entirety of the song, it may not work as well as you think it will. But I won't really talk much about those little fills and licks, because that can be a subject for another video. But what I will talk about is, if we take this example, something I did as a bass player, that would make my part a little bit more interesting to play and wouldn't be too over the top. And again, this is a perfect example to show it to you guys, as I would do chromatic bass lines. So the chords in this case are D minor, A sharp major, and C major, right? So I'd start on D, then I'd move to the B flat, you know, just regular stuff. But when I went from B flat to C, I would add a B as a passing tone, like... And as you can imagine, I would do the same thing from C to D. I would add that C sharp as a passing tone. So instead of having... I would have... And I know what you're thinking. oh my god, it is such a secret trick that nobody knows about and that was so fancy that bass players can play it. No, of course not. But playing these sorts of bass lines, you are still outlining the progression from D to B flat and to C. You're not substituting any of the chords. And of course, the role of a bass line is to outline the chord progression, but to make it kind of seamless. For instance, if I wanted to go just from D to A sharp, a bass player would maybe do something like... And as guitar players, if we have a chord progression like this, our standard way of approaching it is, let's grab our minor pentatonic stuff, because we're in the key of D minor, so D minor pentatonic works, but then we move to B flat major, so we should perhaps land on the note B flat, or in one of the chord tones of E flat. But hey, I'm not really saying don't play your minor pentatonic stuff. That's something that's synonymous with guitar playing. You really shouldn't want to just stop doing that because some guy on the internet told you to. But what I am saying is, if you take this sort of chromatic approach to some of your licks, it can add this little bit of spice to your playing. As I mentioned before, guys like Chris Buck and Ariel Posen, and sometimes Danish P too, do this sort of thing. I can't really remember in which video it was or in which song it was. Chris Buck does some sort of lick. If we're in E minor or G major maybe, probably playing something like G major pentatonic. And the next chord was E minor, so he did that chromatic bass line. And neither you nor Chris Buck needed to do that. You can just play your regular G major pentatonic stuff, then land on the E. But if you do add that chromatic bass line, especially when you're improvising, it sort of makes things flow more easily and kind of makes it seem like you're not really improvising, it was composed beforehand. And you don't really need to do it from below. In this case we went D, D sharp, E to land on the E from E minor, but we can do perhaps F sharp, F, E. And it sort of works, but at least in my opinion, in most cases it works a little bit better if you do it from below, but that's just the sort of sound I like. And in this particular case, one of the reasons that it worked best going up instead of going down is because the first note we played when going up was a D. And don't forget, we were going from G major to E minor, and the D is a note from our G major chord, so it works even better. If we were playing, I don't know, maybe C major to E minor, we could actually play the exact same lick, just starting on C. It's not like it doesn't work, it does, but at least in my opinion, it worked a little bit better when we went from G to E, just because the D note, where we start our chromatic bass line, was a note from our G major chord. But the note D isn't really a note from our C major chord. It is the 9th of C. So it's not like it doesn't work, it does, it's just not as polished. But if we were improvising over something like C major to E dominant 7th, in this case it would work a little bit betterly, because this time the note D, even though it's still the 9th of C and you're playing it over C, it is the 7th of E dominant 7th. And in this case, we're actually playing the 7th within the chord. When we were playing just E minor, even though the D is still the minor 7th at E minor, we weren't playing an E minor 7th. But in this case, because we are playing the D in the E dominant 7th chord, it sort of works as an anticipation to the next chord. But hey, I know what you're thinking, this all sounds good until you think that some chords can't really do a chromatic bass line because some chords don't really have a dominant 7th, or in some cases you can't even find a chord tone in the first chord that you can walk to the next chord. For instance, in the example you had before of D minor to B flat major, you just try to do a walking bass line to that B flat. That first note, it clashes in with the A of our D minor chord. And it can sound a little bit dissonant, so it may not be the sound you're looking for. If it is, go for it, but if it isn't, remember you can still do it from up. But if you want to do it from below, you can just do a natural bass line instead of a chromatic bass line. What do I mean by that? Well, instead of going to land on that B flat, even though doing it chromatically kind of adds a little bit more motion and sounds more like you're resolving to the chord, you can just do a natural bass line. You can go G, A, B flat. So in the context of that lick we had before, there's also the rhythm part of it. We were mostly playing these chromatic bass lines, kind of doing eighth notes, or sometimes going for the pickup note. But again, doing this example of going from D to B flat major, if you want to go for the root, you can just do triplet vibe. You can perhaps start on G and do a chromatic bass line. It really depends on the situation. And just as a little note before we go, even though in bass playing we don't really do it as much, because when we're doing these bass lines, we mostly want to hit either the root of the chord or the bass note of the chord. So for instance, if we're in D minor, theoretically we can land in D, F, or A. But we would mostly want to land in D, because it really gives you that reassurance that we're in D. Or if for some reason we have a D minor with a G on the bass, as a bass player you would either want to land on a D or on a G. The F is still a note of the F minor chord, and the A is also a note of that chord as well, but they're not the most reassuring notes. Usually the bass playing is playing really low, so again we want to get that bass, that foundation. In most songs, if we get too spicy, it ends up not sounding good. But as a guitar player, when you're soloing, because we're usually in a higher register, you can land on either one of those notes. It really doesn't make that much of a difference. For instance, in the example of D minor to B flat major, we mentioned that we can't really do a chromatic bass line to the root of the B flat major, because if we did, at least in the rhythm we had before, we would start out on a G sharp, and the G sharp would clash with the A of the D minor chord. Well, one of the notes of that B flat major chord is D. So we can do a chromatic bass line from C, like C, C sharp, D, to go from D minor to B flat major, something like. Or even if we do it an octave lower. But I guess this video is probably really long already, and there's tons a lot more that I could talk about this sort of a thing, so if you want me to do a part 2, or even keep this series going, please leave it in the comment section below. I'd really like to know your thoughts, and leave a like and leave a comment in the comment section below. If you actually try to do any of these sort of chromatic bass lines and try to add them into your solos or improvisations, please film yourself playing them and post it on Instagram and then tag me on it. Not only will I see it, but I'll repost it and tag you on it. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope this video was helpful to you in any way possible. And if it was, please leave me a comment below. Do you have anything to add to this discussion? Did you agree? Did you not agree? Was there something I missed? Something I should have said? Also, if you have any suggestions for videos, I have this dedicated series called The 8, You Ask I Teach. I know, pretty boring, generic, and self-explanatory title, but it's a series where, as the name implies, I pretty much teach anything you guys have in the comment section below. Well, guitar and or music related, of course. So if you want to get a shout out and want to get your question answered, or just have something you want me to talk about, please leave it in the comment section below with the hashtag E8. I'll leave the playlist with all the episodes right there so that you can check it out. I also do some other videos. Sometimes I look at it specifically from a guitar player that I either think is interesting or a little bit different from what I usually play, and transcribe it and tab it so that you guys can check it out. Sometimes I talk about technique, and other times I look at a music theory related concept and explain it so that you guys can understand it and use it in your own soloing and composing and all of that stuff. For instance, you may want to check out Even Eric Johnson's Mistakes Sound Good. Or maybe you learn all of the picking techniques and perhaps get a girlfriend just by learning this one riff. And lastly but not leastly, what's the big deal with the melodic minor scale? All of those videos will be on the description below, on the card section right there, and on the annotations at the end screen in just a couple of seconds, so please stay tuned. And yeah, I guess that's it. Again, thank you so very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, turn on all the notifications. Please share this video on social media, I'd highly appreciate it. Follow me on social media. Leave a comment for my 8 series, check out some of my other videos, and yeah, cheers!